Today, in the 19th Sunday of Ordinary Time, I want to talk just a little bit about the second reading because I think it's important. Because one of the things that I was looking at this sermon from Father Robert Barron and Bishop Robert Barron. And one of the things that he does, he says that too many times today people think about science and faith as being opposed. So science is based on facts, it's based on reason, but religion is based on, and faith is based on kind of this blindness, this subjectivity, this feelings and emotions. So there's this opposition between the two of them. And he said basically that that's not the case. Because when we think about faith, we can think about the fact that either God created, that there are really kind of two thoughts of the universe, that there is an intelligent creation, that creation was done with God's creative hand, that we see the order, we see the wisdom that's there in the universe, and we ascribe that to God. Or we can think about that something occurred out of nothing, that matter was created, that matter over time, over millions and billions of years, had a certain bringing together and creativity within that, and that over millions and billions of years, it's created to what we have now. So we can either think about the preciousness, the precarious nature of our life, here on this earth, as either being from God himself, or we can think about it as being from, this creative energy force, whatever, that came in existence. And so, because that really does inform our worldview. If we think that the world is created out of nothing, and that basically nothing, we go down into the nothingness after our death, then it's basically eat, drink, and be merry, because really our security is in ourselves. So eat, drink, be merry, and there's a certain seductiveness to that, because we don't want to think about the final judgment, we don't want to think about the end and that will occur. And so if the world is created out of nothing, we go down into nothingness, then there's really no final judgment, there's no looking back on our lives and seeing what has happened and occurred during our life. If there is an intelligent creator who created us for a purpose in our life, then certainly there is going to be that final judgment. There is going to be an accounting of what we have done. And so what it does is that in the gospel, that's important, because if we think about faith and we think about that, then we can come progressively over time to that idea of detachment, which really what the Lord is calling us to do. The Lord is calling us to have that kind of detachment from seeing our security solely within ourselves, having need for more, more goods, more money, more of everything, more. If we think about that our security is on ourselves, then we need to acquire more. And it's not, again, that you're not going to have this situation where, you're not going to be concerned about the stock market and making reasonable decisions about where to put your money. It's not being reckless, but it's also not seeing our security as having to create and having to get more. Because we can think about our security being in the Lord. And so one of the things that's interesting about that is that there is this idea between security and also putting the Lord to the test. There's the idea of security, but also that idea, are we putting the Lord to the test? And I'll give one example in my own life. Security, putting the Lord to the test would be, thinking about going in a really dangerous neighborhood at 2:00 in the morning and walking around at 2-3 o'clock in the morning. That would be putting the Lord to the test. Okay, Lord, you're going to take care of me. You're going to provide for me. So therefore, I'm going to do something reckless and something that would endanger myself. but you're going to take care of me. So that's putting the Lord to the task. Really, when we think about having security within the Lord, there was one time, before I was in seminary, this is back in the 1990s, there was a friend of mine who was working with this one group that worked with inner city youth. And they had gone to some event and were bringing the kids back to their apartment in Southeast Washington. Now, when we went there initially, it wasn't that bad, because it was in the early morning. But now it's about dusk, it's coming down toward dusk, and all of a sudden you see a lot of people doing really sketchy kind of things in that apartment. But one of the things that I prayed is I said, Lord, you wanted me to be here. You wanted the kids here to have enjoyment. You wanted them to experience that enjoyment. So I'm coming here, and please provide for that safety. So there was that security even in a dangerous neighborhood. And the other thing that the Lord does is uses that idea of weddings. And weddings are always going to be important in Scripture because it talks about the fact that it's unknown. So we can't just say, I can put my security in myself right now, but maybe at a certain time in the distant future, I'll consider maybe putting more security in my relationship with God. Because again, what happens is that at a wedding, it starts at an unknown time because the bridegroom goes to the bride's parents, makes the final arrangements, final contracts, sets up the wedding chamber for the evening, the wedding, and then finally the wedding begins. So it begins at an unknown time and it ends at an unknown time. So that idea of wedding is not that we can have this certainty and we can make the plans at that point. Because one of the things we realize with the idea of detachment is that if we wait till we have sufficient amount of money, we're not going to have enough. We're never going to be pleased with what we have. Even if we have just a little bit, if giving away just a little bit, even when we don't have that much, it then brings us through. When we have more, we're willing to give more. And at the end, when we have a fair amount more, we can give a fair amount more because we've done that over the course of our life. And so what I wanted to do is I wanted to conclude with St. Paul's letter to the Philippians. And St. Paul is really that champion of detachment. And in Philippians 4, verses 11 to 13, it says as followeth. It says, not that I am referring to being in need, for I have learned to be content with whatever I have. I know what it is to have little. I know what it's like to have plenty. In any and all circumstances, I have learned the secret of being well fed and going hungry, of having plenty and being in need. I can do all things through him who strengthens me. Thanks. God bless.